Hi everyone! I have 3 brief things to announce, so skip to this part of the video if you wish to skip. First of all, if you happen to notice a change in my overall word choice and/or dialogue, I am experimenting with using a typed out script in this video. Compared to my previous videos, this one is more thought out and planned instead of the format of me spontaneously uttering my thoughts as they come. Secondly, this video is going to deviate from me uttering my thoughts about the nature of the world and is more of an advice video for college students specifically, either being a furry or not. Thirdly, I just wish to say thanks to everybody for the feedback I've gotten over the past few days and from the past 3 videos that I've uploaded here on my channel. And I personally wish to shout out Rembrandt for their comments on my videos, their thoughts, their continued support, and as well as for being the one to basically galvanize me into trying a more scripted format of video, as you could say. And with that being said, enjoy the video. If you happen to be like me, you're a college student. Perhaps you've just come out of high school or whatever the equivalent is for your country. Or you've spent some time in the workforce and have decided to resume your educational journey. As a college sophomore who is currently attending college, I've gone through 4 semesters worth of classes. And today, I would like to share some tips that I've learned over the course of my higher educational journey. And perhaps you may find some use from the advice I'm about to give. As a disclaimer, I'm American, and I'm from Southern California, and I am also a community college student. With that being said, here are 9 tips that I have for you, dear viewer. Number 1, meet with a college counselor. There are certain classes you must take alongside your general education courses, with the specific kinds of courses pertinent to your major, and also graduation may vary depending on where you live. Personally, I'm most familiar with iGetsy, which is basically a plan of general education classes that Californian community college students must follow to satisfy most lower division requirements to transfer to a university, such as UCLA or SDSU. As for classes relating to your major, you either have to find something on your student portal that tells you what classes to take, or you may need to check in on your college's website. However, what I can most certainly tell you is that by meeting with a college counselor, you can get specific advice tailored specifically to your individual goals as a student. The college counselor that you may meet will more likely than not know what you need to do in order to graduate. Tip number 2, show up to class 10 minutes early, especially on the first day. The first day of a college class, in my experience, is where you not only get to decide where you sit for the rest of the semester, but also where your professors outline their syllabus and their expectations for their students over the course of the semester. There is also the time where professors may decide to drop no-shows, especially in the first few classes that you're going to be having with your professor. So if you wish to keep your spot in the class, show up on the first day and also the days thereafter. As for the rest of the times where you'll be meeting for lectures, I found it useful, if possible, to show up a few minutes early so I can not only get to my seat, but also bring out my notebook and pencil to be ready, or also to just sharpen my pencil preemptively. I would like to mention it is really, really important for you to make sure that you make it to your lectures unless you're sick or otherwise dealing with, an emergency that's excusable. This time around, you're paying for the classes, not the state or the government. You're the one that's paying for them. And so to get your money's worth, it would probably be best to show up and, pay attention to class. Tip number 3, take good notes. What do I mean by good notes? I mean it in the sense of not necessarily copying word for word what the lecturer is presenting. Now, I do get that there are situations where it is useful to know the literary definition of something that the professor talks about, that's fine. That's fine. What I mean to say here is to not only write down the literary definition, but also try and process it into more human words and using words and vocabulary that you use yourself so that your brain more easily processes that information instead of just simply regurgitating what has been said in your lecture. Now, this one's going to be a little bit of a long one. Tip number 4, study, and manage your time well. Depending on your course load and your own personal circumstances, this part is going to be a little bit tricky. And I will also say here, I'm not exactly knowing of your own individual situations, of course. This is just more general advice, and so some advice may or may not be useful. Basically, I'm trying to do my best with, what I've lived through in my experience, in my own college journey, but my own journey is probably going to be different from yours. So what may have worked for me may not necessarily work for you, and that's okay. That's okay. So continuing on, the rule of thumb that I've been given when it comes to time devoted to a class is usually about 2 to 3 hours of studying outside the classroom for every credit that class is worth, basically per week. For example, I'm taking Spanish 4 online, and it is a 5-credit class. It is therefore expected of me to devote 10 to 15 hours a week at minimum towards that class. As for how I study, I devote about 1 to 3 hours a day studying or otherwise completing assignments that I need to do for that particular class. I make it a point that I cannot necessarily do anything else for that period of time unless I feel I am totally and completely done. More on that later. I also utilize psychologically proven methods of improving memory and recall while also reducing time spent. 2 methods I will talk about here are active recall and spaced repetition. Active recall is when you attempt to retrieve or recall information on your own without reading or being prompted. That is to say, for example, using my Spanish class for an example, I've been studying the vocabulary I was given somewhat rigorously over the past few days, trying to know the words that I need to know and prompting myself the English and Spanish equivalents for those definitions. It is because of this method, alongside spaced repetition, that I attribute to my, and again, I'm flaunting here. I understand I don't want to, seem that I'm a bit better than other people. But what I will say is that the methods that I just mentioned just now, I attribute that to my near perfect streak of A's over the course of my time at the community college that I'm at. And speaking of spaced repetition, by the way, it is basically when you space out your studying over the course of multiple days instead of doing it all in 1 or 2 days. That is to say, it's kind of really important to manage your time over the course of the semester towards your studies, and to utilize techniques that only make it easier for you to study, but you also be able to do it in less time. And also, getting good sleep is important. More on that later as well. I also recommend getting assignments done as soon as possible, but also don't go too far ahead. Just because you complete stuff early doesn't mean that you understand the material necessarily, especially if you do it all in 1 or 2 days, which, again, congrats, but it's not really going to stick in your head. Even if you finish stuff early, just still try and dedicate time towards studying and just reviewing the material, even if it seems boring or if it seems as if you know it already. Just continue to review it. Just include old stuff, new stuff, and you'll be on your merry way. Fun fact, as of right now, at the time of this video, being, what is it? Wednesday, January 29th, the next set of assignments I have aren't due until Sunday. And I've completed pretty much all of the activities I needed to do for my Spanish 4 class, at least for the first for my first lesson, which is due February 9th. So basically, I've been kind of cramming. Well, I mean, it kind of depends on your definition of cramming, okay? But basically, my point is, I've gone ahead and done stuff ahead of time. I've read my textbooks for my other classes as well, by the way. And I have a lot more free time, which I can spend either recording videos or reviewing stuff that I've already reviewed over the past few days, so it further cements itself in my brain. Anyways, another thing I would like to mention, which I briefly touched on earlier, is getting plenty of sleep. Because guess what? it's good for you. According to Yale School of Medicine, alongside what I've learned in my Psych 100 class and my other psych classes, sleep is incredibly important for encoding and consolidating memories, as well as for your brain to clean itself of waste. So basically, in plain terms, like I mentioned earlier, like twice, sleep is important because it makes sure that what you're studying during the day, it sticks in your brain. It allows itself to be consolidated and like encoded in your brain so that the next day you'll have a better time just, remembering stuff. And according to the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, there was a positive correlation between poor sleep and bad test scores. That is to say, getting poor sleep typically just leads to just not really doing well on tests. Now, I do acknowledge that what I just mentioned just now, it is much easier said than done. And I acknowledge that for some, they may have difficulty falling asleep at night due to worries or life troubles or just stuff going on in your life. Which is basically what I'm trying to say is that while society may demean you for not being able to deal with what it sees as just trivial problems, I just want to say that if these things are problematic and negatively impacting your life, I would very highly recommend talking to somebody, whether that be a close confidant or a trained mental health professional. Okay? And I want to say here too, you watching this video means that you want to improve academically and personally. You want to strive for success. And I just want to let you know, good job on making it through this video, or at least however long this video is going to be. And there's resources available to help accommodate you, to make sure that you get the most out of your education, and also to make sure that you have a satisfying and wonderful life. Yeah, that was just a little spiel. Again, really, 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 you're doing great. Wherever you may be, you're doing great. Okay, moving on to tip number 6. Apply for financial aid, even if you don't think you qualify. At least in the United States, FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, is a form that you can fill out. At the time of this video's recording, right now, for the new school year, you can do that. This application allows you access to scholarships, the work-study program, the ability to apply for federal subsidized loans, and the federal Pell Grant, which is basically free money. So I highly suggest you take advantage of it whenever chance you can get. Another thing I would like to mention in this category is applying for things such as TRIO SSS and the Promise program, which are basically programs specifically for first generation college students, I believe, or anyone that just doesn't really make a lot of money. And it helps like pay for books, it helps pay for your tuition. And they've been really helpful for me personally because like basically I'm kind of quite lucky to say that like basically I have so far in community college, over the 2 years I've been at community college, it's basically been free. So again, I'm really appreciative to be a part of those programs. And guess what? If I'm able to get into those programs, you can too. And they'll make sure that you do the best that you can, be the best person you can be in terms of being a student and just personal development. And then just 3 more to go. I have tip number 7. It's okay to attend community college for your first half of your 4-year educational journey and towards getting a bachelor's degree. Because guess what? While it may suck, I guess, in terms of like the social aspects, I would argue that the part of attending community college, it can save you a whole lot of money over the course of your education. And the quality of the classes for me have been pretty good, at least in my experience. But again, it can vary. All right, it can vary depending on the kinds of professors and all sorts of things. According to if I'm pronouncing it, Mount Wachusett, I think Wachusett Community College. According to them, community colleges average $3,862 in tuition costs a year, compared to the annual tuition cost for public four-year universities for in-state students being roughly around $9,377 on average. And again, this is per year. That is to say, according to this site, you're paying 2.42 times less on tuition if you attend community college on average compared to being an in-state student at a traditional university. And also, just a brief interjection here, I also have to say that all the sources I do mention, saying, according to blah, 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 whatever, will be linked in the description. So you can independently verify or do your own research, which I highly recommend. Like, look, I want to think of myself as at least somewhat credible, but in today's modern age, there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around and people don't really think too much about it. So what I highly recommend is, if you have the time and the willingness to, just double check the sources I have in the description. Just make sure. I've also done my own part in making sure that they have a .edu and stuff like that. But, just to make sure that the information I'm saying is valid, that the data collected and the research or whatever is valid and correct, and whatever, just so in case I am saying something wrong, you can point that out and then I'll change it. Moving on to tip number 8, take advantage of free services available on campus. For example, at my community college, we have access to a library with computers and books, the ability to use one of the printers 10 times a day with our student ID card. We have free Wi-Fi, we have free behavioral health services, we have a clinic that's providing free medical services, we also have free tutoring and some other stuff too, such as sometimes we have movies, and also people coming along with these I don't know what kind of dog breed, but they're really, but dogs. You can go up and pet them, and that's really cool, So, what I'm basically trying to say here is, at least in my experience at my community college, my tuition is paying for these services. So to make the most out of my own money and time would probably be wise of me to take advantage of it. Which I probably will be doing soon, for a number of reasons. Lastly, tip number 9, which is our last tip for today, by the way. It is to remember that there's more to life than studying. So to basically end things off, I would like to mention that while it is nice to be industrious and, checking all the boxes and doing all your assignments and stuff like that, it's also important to prioritize your own personal and social life as well, especially if you're young like me, right? I'm 19. I'm quite young, I'm not 40 or 60 or 90 or whatever, but I'm 19. There's so much life ahead of me, right? And so much stuff has changed over the past few years. I've grown as a person and, all that stuff. So what I'm trying to say here is, yes, spend time, in your education, because, education is really good. But also remember to try new things. Develop a new hobby. Try going out to the gym. Reading books, or, making a video to post on YouTube, trying to help other people with their own educational journeys, right? But it can also just be much more simpler than that. Whether it be just goofing off with your friends and relaxing in bed, watching TV, whatever you want to watch, right? Because especially once you've done everything that you needed to do, I would think it's perfectly valid to reward yourself, or just spend time just enjoying life, or just taking things as they come. I speak this message more or less for those who are sort of like me in the way, where it's you devote a lot of time to getting stuff done, and stuff like that. But you're feeling as though like you have to keep up with this constantly evolving world that just seems to just rapidly change in front of our eyes over time. Like, the world has changed a lot, just culturally, politically, all that stuff. And it just feels like you always have to keep doing the next best thing, or like, oh, um, like figuring out how like Blender works, or like getting into art, or like, or just, just continually like trying to. How do I describe it? Like you're just like as if there's no time to rest. And while it's good to learn new things, it's also okay to prioritize your own mental health and take a break. Because while the pursuit of knowledge is great and enlightening and wonderful, life has a beauty of its own, one that you only really ever experience once. So cherish it. And with that, those were some personal tips from me, Merlin the Fox. Well, I mean, Protogen right now, but I'm Merlin the Fox. That's my persona. Which, if this is your first video seeing me, I just want to say hi. Hello. I'm a furry, as you can probably tell, that kind of just exists on the internet. And I'm glad you made it to the end of the video, basically. So, with that, that was me, Merlin the Fox, signing off. Because guess what? Perhaps after spending the last few days absolutely grinding away with classes and just, getting stuff done and just using those studying techniques, I should probably relax and get a well-deserved break. Especially, after I've cooked up this script, right, for the first time. This is like 3.5 pages worth of stuff, which isn't a lot to my taste since I've done a lot more in the past for school, but it's something. So, yeah, I should probably rest. So goodbye, thanks for stopping by, and good morning, good evening, and good night. Bye!